Yeah, let's break that down into sections. So we have verses 1 through 5. It's about wisdom in service of authority. So in verse 1, we see wisdom changes a person's face. So there's an outward expression of insight. In verse 2, we see obey the king's command because of a solemn oath. And in verse 3 through 5, we see don't be hasty to leave the king's presence or support a bad cause. Wise people discern the right time and procedure. And so let's look at what those points mean. First of all, respect for authority, especially in a monarchy, is practical wisdom. There is a time and a way to act rightly, even under flawed leadership. Godly wisdom doesn't just rebel, it discerns how and when to act. In what areas of life are we under authority? Like church, in work, or government. Are we quick to criticize or slow to understand the bigger picture? Pray for wisdom to know when to speak, when to wait, and how to act justly. So verses 6 through 9 is about the limits of human control. So verse 6, there's a proper limit or time and procedure, but misery weighs on people. In verses 7 through 8, we see no one knows the future or can control the day of death. People dominate others to their own hurt. So what does that mean? Even wise people are powerless over the life's deepest mysteries. And so the human impulse is to control often, which leads to oppression or sorrow. And our inability to know the future calls us to humility and trust in God. So, are we trying to control something that only God holds? How do we respond when we can't see what is ahead? And ask God to help you trust in His timing rather than forcing your own place and your own plans and time. So, next section is verses 10 through 13, which is the injustice and the fear of the Lord. In verse 10, we see the wicked receive honors in death, while the righteous are forgotten. In verse 11, we see that when justice is delayed, people keep sinning. And in verse 12 through 13, we see the wicked may live long, but it will go better in the end for those who fear God. So, the meaning here is that this is a hard tension, okay? But injustice often appears to win, and God's justice may not be immediate, but it is sure. And the one who fears God will ultimately flourish, even if not visibly or in the moment. So where do we feel discouraged by injustice? How can fearing God shape our response to unfairness? Meditate on how Jesus trusted the Father amid injustice, like in 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 23. So the next section is verses 14 through 17, which is about embracing mystery and joy. So verse 14 says, sometimes the righteous get what the wicked deserve, and vice versa. So the teacher commends enjoyment in life, or commends joy in life. So verse 16 through 17 said, even with tireless effort, no one can fully understand God's work. And so that means that injustice shouldn't lead to despair. It should push us to trust and enjoy God's daily gifts. Even the wisest cannot grasp all that God is doing. And this mystery leads not to meaninglessness, but to reverent surrender. And where are we overthinking or overanalyzing life right now? And what gift of enjoyment, food, rest, beauty, or relationships is God offering you today? And thank God that He knows exactly what you don't, and that's enough. So the next section is our wrap up. So let's kind of wrap up this this chapter in chapter 8. So 3 question prompts. Think for the first one is, how do you typically respond to injustice? Is it in anger, indifference, or in trust? 2, what does it mean to fear God practically in your everyday choices? And number 3, where can you embrace joy without needing all the answers? So ask God for peace in things you can't control. Confess areas where you've relied on your own understanding. And then thank Him for being just, even when life seems unfair. So, yeah, and that is my section for today. So, but let's look at that verse in just a moment. First Peter 2:23. Let's read that. And that was related to how we meditate on how Jesus trusted the Father amidst the injustice. So 1 Peter 2:23. 1 Peter 2:23 says, when they hurled their insults at him, he did not retaliate. When he suffered, he made no threats. Instead, he entrusted himself to Him who judges justly. Wow. See, that is an amazing thing. And I think, Jesus had so much wisdom because of this, because he trusted so much in the Father and His work. He knew that the Father judges justly, and so he didn't have to win arguments. He just pointed out certain things, certain contexts, and certain things, and sometimes that stirred up the crowd to start to stone him or want to stone him, and then he'd flee. Well, he'd escape and get through the crowd, but yeah, and so there's different things that Jesus did, but Jesus never, Jesus was very intentional about the information that he shared with different groups of people. So he withheld certain information in front of some people, and then explained things that he withheld with those other people with other people. So, for example, when a lot of times with the parables, Jesus would share the story of the parables in front of the crowds, and just say the parable, and then they'd leave, and the disciples would start asking questions. Lord, what do you mean by that parable? And Jesus would explain what it meant more clearly to them. And and I think he said the purpose, his purpose is something along the lines of how people who, he knows that there's people who shouldn't know what it means, because he knows their hearts, and they really couldn't. And the meaning, because sometimes the meaning spoke directly to certain people, and so, but let me see. Yeah. yeah. Anyways, so that's what I wanted to say is that Jesus had a purpose, and he stuck with the purpose. He was moving forward with every step of the way. Um, he he was tempted in many ways, but he never fell into temptation, never broke, never sinned. And thanks to his perfect life, and the fact that he died for our sins and then rose from the dead, we are now saved too. We can believe in that and be saved. So yeah, it's an amazing thing. So yeah. So yeah, there's